Now here's something that I think you should give some serious thought to, have a good understanding of before you actually get started in your freight broker business. In a freight brokerage business, it is the freight broker who's responsible for paying carriers, paying owner-operators once those loads are delivered. And the question you have to ask yourself as a freight broker business owner is, how do I plan to navigate this issue? How do I plan to pay invoices when those invoices come due? Now, what you have to understand is those invoices could easily exceed $50,000 in a 30-day period of time if you only move 20 loads. And if you don't pay those invoices or don't pay them on time, it could impact your credit rating. And if your credit rating is impacted, then of course it's going to cause you problems with being able to move loads. And if you're not able to move loads effectively as a freight broker when that's your bread and butter, you have some serious issues. So in today's video, I'll share with you 3 options that you might want to consider to finance your payables. And then we'll discuss what I believe is the best part about using a factoring company and what I believe is the worst part about using factoring companies. And then we'll discuss at the end of this video, if you stick around, what I believe is the best option for new freight brokers. So come on inside, sit back, relax, and let's get down into the business. Cash, warm, soft, cash. To me, it's always good to have cash as an option, to have it in your arsenal to pay your payables. Because when you're paying your payables through your own money, then you don't have to pay any interest on that. But now we also have to understand that if you're paying your payables from your own money, then you could run into a cash flow problem because you can only move as many loads as you can pay for. So if you run out of money, then you can't move any more loads. And if you recall what I said earlier, you can move 20 loads in a 30-day period of time and easily surpass $50,000. So what you have to look at is, how many loads do I want to move per month? If you only want to move 20 loads per month, then $50,000 would suffice. But I would guess that you want to move more than 50 loads per month. The amount of money you need on hand will ultimately be determined by how many loads you'll move per month. A freight broker does not want to be limited, capped at a number of loads that he can move per month, because then he puts a cap or limitation on his revenue. For this reason, cash may not be the best option, at least not as a standalone option for a new freight broker. However, if you plan to use this option along with another option, then that could be a better way to go. Credit! Oh, credit! Isn't credit the American way? Isn't that how we afford to drive the cars that we cannot afford to drive? Because of credit, right? Well, it's the same way we afford to move the loads we can't afford to pay for ourselves. Credit, credit. So now we've arrived to the point where some of you are asking the question in your minds, even if you aren't willing to admit it just yet, why do I need credit? What is the purpose of me having credit as a freight broker? Well, that's a really good question. A freight broker needs credit because the trucking companies that you're working with, they are going to extend you short-term credit, or their factoring companies will be extending you short-term credit, and you have to qualify to be granted that credit. So they're going to check your credit to make sure that you are credit worthy. And when you're in the beginning of your business, usually you haven't established any credit just yet. You have to establish that credit by paying carriers. During the process of you building your freight broker business credit, some carriers and owner-operators will choose to work with you, and others will choose not to work with you. The ones that do choose to work with you, your responsibility is to make sure that you have an effective means of paying back the credit that carrier has granted. Now, one of the most common ways that freight brokers pay back carriers, pay back owner-operators, is via freight factoring companies. Now, I personally don't think that freight factoring companies is the answer for every single new freight broker, but it will be a good option for most. And here's why. A freight factoring company gives you, as a new freight broker, the ability to take your mind off of worrying about how you're going to pay your carriers. You see, that's taken care of. The factoring company is going to take that responsibility and say, hey, guess what? You don't have to worry about this as a hit against your cash flow. You just worry about getting loads moved. We'll worry about paying for those loads. That's a very, very big thing for a new freight broker because it allows for you to concentrate, focus all of your effort and attention where it should be, on your customers, on learning the process of moving loads, because that is what gets you paid. And of course, it's not free to use a factoring company. They're not going to give you money, loan you money for any period of time, and you not have to pay something for getting that loan. So there will be a payment that you pay. Every time you factor a load through a factoring company, you have to pay a percentage, whether that's 3%, 4%, 2.5%, whatever fee that factoring company charges, you'll have to pay. But now here's the good thing about a factoring company. You are not always responsible for paying the fee. If your carrier is interested in taking what we call a quick pay, then the carrier has to pay the fee. So you could essentially use the factoring company, have them factor that invoice, and you not have to pay for it because your carrier takes a quick pay. Anytime money is advanced in our business, you have to pay for it. That's a charge, a fee, anytime you get money before a net 30-day period. There is one big drawback, I believe, to using a factoring company, and that is that factoring company has all of your information. And when I say all of your information, I mean all of your customers' information. They're seeing your rate requests, your rate confirmation, your invoices. They see everything. They have all of your shippers' contact information. So to think that they don't use that information is just a bit naive to me. And I believe that anytime you're providing that type of information, that type of data to someone who could be competing against you, that of course gives them an unfair advantage. Next up, let's talk about the business loan. Some people choose to go out to finance their payables, they get a business loan. I personally don't like the business loan a whole lot, for the very reason that when you go out and get this loan, on the day that you get this loan, you start paying interest on whatever amount that you borrow. I don't like that, especially when it comes to financing my payables, because I might not need $100,000 today, so there's no sense in borrowing $100,000 and then paying interest rate on that $100,000. There are plenty of other things out there that you can use a business loan for, but for me, my payables, paying carriers, owner-operators, that's not what I would choose to use a business loan for. And also what you might want to take into consideration for a business loan, you probably are going to have some issues getting approved for that type of loan because you don't have any business credit established. When your business has not been in business for very long, it does not have any activity, it is not making money, no revenue really is coming in just yet, then they really don't have any reason to go out and grant you a business loan because the business is not worthy of a loan just yet. Once the business starts earning money, then you're more likely to get approved for that type of loan. So now what about the business line of credit? I personally like the business line of credit much better than I like the business loan for the reason I mentioned earlier about the interest rate. When you get a business line of credit, let's say it's a $100,000 business line of credit. Well, you don't pay interest on $100,000. You pay interest on the amount that you use. So if you only use $20,000, you pay interest on that $20,000. Now, what you might notice right away when you compare the business line of credit to working with a factoring company is that a factoring company will charge you on every single invoice. Now, the question is who pays it? Will you pay it or will the trucking company pay it? But there will be a charge on every invoice. Now, when you compare that to the business line of credit, there's an annual percentage rate that you're paying. So that usually is going to work out much more favorably than it will to pay on every single invoice. Now, if I was starting a freight broker business, which one of these options would I choose to pay my payables to make sure that my carriers are paid and paid on time? Would it be cash? Of course, if I had the cash on hand, that might be something that I might look at. But for most new freight brokers, I wouldn't recommend that you use cash. I wouldn't recommend a business line of credit or a business loan because of how hard it's going to be to get approved for those two types of loans or extensions of credit. But I do think that the factoring company is the best decision for most new freight brokers because it gives you the access to move unlimited loads, not have to worry about how you're going to pay for them. It does expose your information to that factoring company for a period of time. I don't think the factoring company is a long-term solution, but a shorter-term solution, 3-4 years perhaps. That way you're not exposing all of your information. And I also think that it's important to have the option with the factoring company to factor the loads that you want to factor. Some loads you may not want to factor. Some shippers you may not want to run through that factoring company. It's good to have that as an option. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I certainly hope this information has been helpful. If you want to learn more about the freight broker business, I'll leave a free link in the description. It's my 5-video series, and I titled it, How the Load Movement Process Works. It will give you a chance to come into the office with me and watch me as I move loads, talk to shippers and carriers. That way you can get a better understanding of how this business works before you come into it. And then if you're interested in learning more about how we go out and find the shippers that we work with, that we do business with on a daily basis, I'll leave a free video right here. So until the next time, I wish you the very best in your life and business. See you at the top, because the bottom is much too crowded.